America is at a strange crossroads. Average wages have gone up compared to 10 years ago, yet the costs of housing, healthcare, and education have skyrocketed far faster. Inflation continues to haunt the nation, while credit card debt has reached record highs. Young Americans are delaying buying homes, starting families, and even the dream of retirement, not because they aren't working hard, but because money seems to slip through their fingers faster than ever. In this climate, Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings deliver a bold message in their book, You Deserve to Be Rich. Wealth isn't just for the privileged few. It's your right, if you know how to think and act the right way. This isn't a get-rich-quick book. It's a roadmap to escape the financial traps that millions of Americans are stuck in. And trust me, if you're living in America in 2025, this is a conversation you can't afford to miss. So hit like, subscribe, and join me on this journey to discover how to turn You Deserve to Be Rich into a reality in your own life. Part 1. The Wealth Mindset, the Foundation of Change. Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings begin with the truth many Americans prefer to avoid. Most of our financial limitations don't come from what's in our bank account, they come from our mindset. We grow up in environments where money is often tied to stress, debt, or a sense of scarcity. Generation after generation passes down familiar phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, just be grateful for a steady job, wealth is only for the privileged few. And slowly, unconsciously, many of us grow up believing we don't deserve to be wealthy. The authors call this the financial mindset trap. When you believe that money only comes from luck or from being born into privilege, you eliminate yourself from the game before it even begins. Instead of seeking opportunity, you accept limits. Instead of building a strategy, you live reactively, working just enough to cover the bills, waiting for the next paycheck, and falling back into the cycle of debt. But here's the truth, as Rashad and Troy emphasize, a wealth mindset isn't a privilege you're born with. It's a skill you can learn. And that skill begins by changing the way you see yourself. Wealthy people aren't just different because of their bank balances. They're different because they believe they have the right to learn, to invest, to experiment, and to build a better life. Look at America today. Even with inflation making everyday expenses a heavy burden, there are still people who know how to turn a few dollars into the first bricks of financial freedom. They read, they study, they try investing. They explore the market, and most importantly, they believe they can do it. Their stories don't start with massive capital, but with a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, do I have enough money to start? They ask, am I willing to learn so I can start? A wealth mindset works like a lens. If you keep wearing old, foggy glasses, all you'll see are barriers and unfairness. But if you change the lens, you'll begin to notice opportunities hidden inside challenges. A $50 online course that opens the door to a new career, a few $100s invested consistently that compound into real change over years, or a skill patiently built that becomes a steady side income. And that's the opening message of You Deserve to Be Rich. If you don't change the way you think about money, you'll remain trapped in the same cycle. But if you begin to believe that you are worthy, and if you're willing to learn and turn that belief into action, then the journey to wealth is no longer a distant dream. It becomes a practical, achievable plan. Part 2. Breaking free from the 9 to 5. In You Deserve to Be Rich, Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings highlight a hard but important truth. The traditional 9-to-5 job with a steady paycheck is no longer the only path and rarely the path to financial freedom. Take a look at today's reality. In 2025, the price of a simple fast food meal at McDonald's has doubled compared to just 5 years ago. Rent in major cities keeps climbing, and healthcare insurance continues to be such a heavy burden that many workers go into debt just to afford basic care. In this environment, no matter how hard you work, your 9-to-5 salary struggles to keep up with rising costs. You're not failing because you're lazy. You're stuck because the system is designed to keep you busy without ever letting you truly break free. Rashad and Troy don't dismiss the value of a stable job. It provides temporary security and a foundation to start from. But they warn that if you put your entire financial future in the hands of a single paycheck, you're handing complete control of your life to a company, a boss, or even an economic shift you can't control. So what's the solution? The authors stress one key principle: free yourself from total dependence on your salary. That doesn't mean quitting your job overnight. It means starting to build additional streams of income, no matter how small. It could be investing consistently in the stock market, turning a skill into freelance consulting, or creating digital content that can grow into a long-term asset. Here's a simple example. Imagine dedicating just 10 hours a week to a side project. At first, it may only bring in a few $100s, but after a year or two, that could multiply. And more importantly, it gives you something a 9-to-5 can't: autonomy. The autonomy to decide what you'll do, what you'll learn, and which direction you'll take for your future. Wealthy people understand that a salary isn't the enemy, but it isn't the solution either. It's a launch pad, and you have to use it to build something bigger. While many people live paycheck to paycheck, hoping things will get better someday, those who break out of the 9-to-5 trap quietly turn every dollar into a seed, planting it into markets, skills, or personal projects. The message Rashad and Troy leave is crystal clear. If you want freedom, you can't stop at working to live. You must learn how to use your job as leverage to build wealth. And this doesn't require massive capital. It requires vision, discipline, and the courage to start. Because in the end, your 9-to-5 can pay for the present, but only when you move beyond it can you truly buy your future.
Part 3. Smart Budgeting and Financial Structure. Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings stress one undeniable truth. You can't build wealth on a foundation of chaos, and budgeting is that foundation. Managing money isn't about tracking every penny and feeling guilty each time you buy a cup of coffee. It's about designing a financial structure smart enough that your money automatically works for you. Many Americans fall into one of two extremes. Some spend freely, only to panic at the end of the month when their account is empty. Others tighten their belts to the point of misery, denying themselves every small joy, only to splurge uncontrollably after feeling deprived for too long. Both paths lead to the same place, a sense of being out of control. What Rashad and Troy propose isn't austerity, it's creating a smart budgeting system where every dollar has a clear job. They encourage practicing the principle of pay yourself first, meaning before you pay bills, before you spend, you automatically set aside a portion of your income for saving and investing. This isn't a luxury, it's the foundation of your future security. Imagine this: instead of waiting until the end of the month to see what's left, you set fixed percentages in advance. Say, 20% of income goes straight into investments, 10% into an emergency fund, and the rest covers living and leisure. Over time, you create a framework of discipline that removes the burden of daily decision-making. The system works for you, while you enjoy peace of mind. The truth is, many Americans live paycheck to paycheck not because they don't earn enough, but because they lack structure. You could make $80,000 a year, but if your expenses balloon with your income, you're no better off than someone making $40,000. On the other hand, someone who sets boundaries and allocates wisely can steadily save and invest so that after 5 or 10 years, their financial picture looks dramatically different. Smart budgeting isn't about cutting back, it's about prioritizing. Prioritize paying down debt before splurging on luxuries. Prioritize investing in the future before chasing status symbols. Prioritize long-term peace of mind over short-term appearances. Rashad and Troy also point out something counterintuitive. Once you have a clear structure, you actually feel more free, not less. Because you know your limits, you're no longer haunted by the fear of overspending. And each time you see your savings or investments grow, you gain more motivation to stay disciplined. This is what the authors call freedom within structure. True freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want whenever you want. It comes from building a system where money serves its purpose. When you control your cash flow, you stop feeling chased by bills and start feeling like you're leading the game. Because in the end, wealth doesn't come from rare, life-changing decisions. It comes from thousands of small decisions, repeated consistently within a smart structure. And budgeting is the tool that turns your financial dreams into reality, not by luck, but by intentional, disciplined action. Part 4. Legacy and Generational Wealth. In You Deserve to Be Rich, Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings highlight a concept often overlooked in personal finance. True wealth isn't just about what you accumulate for yourself, it's about what you pass on to the next generation. In America, the wealth gap between communities isn't only about current income. It's also about the fact that some families get a head start through inherited assets, while others have to begin from scratch with every generation. When parents leave behind a home, a retirement account, or even a small education fund, their children step into adulthood with fewer burdens and more choices. That is the power of generational wealth. Rashad and Troy point out a hard truth. Most of us focus only on living well today, but without long-term planning, the next generation will face the same struggles or even greater ones as healthcare, education, and housing costs continue to skyrocket in America. What you build today isn't just about your own comfortable retirement, it's about ensuring your children don't have to start life shackled by student loans or credit card debt. And legacy isn't only about money. It's about knowledge, mindset, and habits. If you pass down not just savings, but also the wisdom of how to invest, how to manage expenses, and how to view money as a tool instead of a burden, that becomes priceless. Money can be lost, but financial literacy and the right mindset can be sustained and multiplied across generations. In reality, many rich families in America maintain their status for decades not because they're rich, but because they've built systems of transfer, trust funds, life insurance, rental properties, and financial lessons instilled from childhood. Meanwhile, many middle-class or working-class families, even when earning well, spend it all within their lifetime. The result? Their children are forced to start over from zero. The authors remind us, true wealth isn't measured by how much you have, but by what you leave behind. If you want to break the cycle of working just to pay bills, you have to think beyond yourself. You have to think generationally. And this doesn't require grand gestures. It starts with intentional, practical steps. Purchasing life insurance to protect your family. Setting up an education fund for your children. Owning property instead of renting forever. Or simply writing a will to ensure your assets aren't scattered without direction. These small, deliberate moves are the seeds of legacy. On a deeper level, Rashad and Troy emphasize that legacy is the freedom you give your children to chase dreams instead of just chasing bills. A family with generational wealth enables their kids to experiment, to innovate, to start businesses, or to pursue higher education without being chained to crushing debt. That is the kind of power that can reshape not just one life, but an entire lineage. In the end, the authors leave us with a direct question. Do you want to be someone who simply lived well for one lifetime, or someone who laid the foundation for the next generation to live better? It's a question that challenges responsibility, but also opens a new vision. True wealth isn't about the number in your account today. It's about the lasting impact you leave tomorrow.
Part 5. Money as choice, not pressure. Rashad, Bilal, and Troy Millings want us to reframe the way we see money. It's not just numbers on a paycheck or a bank statement. It's choice in life. Too many Americans today live inside a familiar cycle. Get paid, pay off debt, cover expenses, and wait for the next paycheck. For them, money feels like constant pressure. The pressure of paying bills, the pressure of holding on to a 9-to-5 job, the pressure of fearing the loss of their only source of income. When money becomes a burden, it stops being a tool for life and turns into a chain that keeps you from trying new things, from resting, from dreaming bigger. Rashad and Troy argue that true freedom comes when you turn money into choice, When you're financially secure, you can choose to take a few months off to learn a new skill instead of being forced to cling to a job you hate. You can choose to start a small business instead of letting fear of risk keep you in place. You can choose to send your kids to a better school or to spend quality time with your family instead of working late into the night. Here, money is not the final destination. It's the foundation that gives you options, and those options are the real measure of wealth. Someone with a high income but no savings, drowning in debt, actually has fewer choices than someone who lives below their means, invests wisely, and has the power to say no to things that don't bring value. What's interesting is this: when you view money as choice, the way you spend it changes. Instead of buying things to impress others, you start asking, will this give me more choices in the future? For example, a luxury car may boost your pride in the short term, but it also adds debt and higher insurance costs, limiting your financial freedom later. On the other hand, an emergency fund or an investment account may not be flashy, but they provide peace of mind and flexibility at the most important moments. The authors also highlight the psychological shift. When you see money as choice, financial stress decreases. Instead of treating money like a constant battle to win, you treat it as a tool for opening doors. That perspective brings calm, clarity, and shields you from the endless pressure of comparison and competition with others. Imagine this: you've saved enough to take 3 months off work. When your boss starts piling on pressure, you don't feel trapped. You know you have the option to quit, to retrain, or simply to rest. That's the kind of freedom money is meant to give. Rashad and Troy leave us with one clear message: you don't deserve to live in fear of money. You deserve the right to choose the life you want, and the way you manage, save, and invest today will determine whether your future is ruled by pressure or by freedom of choice. Part 6: The Spirit of Self-Learning and Action. Rashad and Troy emphasize this truth: wealth is not a secret reserved for the lucky few. It begins with the spirit of self-learning, learning how to manage money, how to invest, how to see beyond the job in front of you. More importantly, it's about taking small, consistent actions every single day. Most people don't fail because they lack information. They fail because they never start. They keep waiting for the perfect time. But in reality, every day you delay is another day of opportunity lost. You can start small, track your spending, read a personal finance book, or set aside a small percentage of your paycheck for investing. These simple habits, compounded over time, create the difference between living under financial pressure and living with the freedom of choice. In the end, Rashad and Troy leave us with one clear reminder: your financial future does not lie in the hands of the government, your boss, or anyone else. It lies in your own hands. So the real question is, will you keep just listening, or will you start taking action today? If you found value in this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future summaries that help you learn, grow, and move closer to financial freedom. Your future begins with the small steps you take today.